On the green fence. On the green fence.
Hello and welcome to On the Green Fence. I'm Neil King, and today we're looking at artificial intelligence. How can it help us confront major challenges like climate change? What are the downsides of this technology? And what might its development mean for us humans as a species? What you've just heard there wasn't actually me speaking, although some colleagues have confirmed to me that it does sound very much like a bored version of myself. But this is a very good example of what is possible these days with artificial intelligence, or AI. AI tools like the voice generator we've just heard have been creating a lot of buzz lately, and that especially goes for ChatGPT. That's OpenAI's chatbot that has been trained on data from the internet to be able to converse, write essays and compose music and poetry. And the results are rather impressive, bearing in mind that it's only going to improve from now on. And there are many environmental implications if this technology is scaled, which is why we decided to dedicate a mini-series with On the Green Fence to this very topic. But even though AI sounds like something that's super futuristic, it is already part of our everyday lives. And it has been for a while. Think face recognition on our mobile phones, Spotify, Netflix, YouTube. They all use AI to recommend content based on our preferences. Or what about navigation apps, using AI to tell us the best way to get from A to B? So given it can do so much already, it's time to take a closer look at what the rise of this technology means for the environment. Can it help us deal with biodiversity threats or reduce carbon emissions? Or will it create new problems that are harmful to the planet? We put some of those questions to Dr. David Rolnick. He's an assistant professor in the School of Computer Science at McGill University in Canada and at the Mila AI Institute. He's also the co-founder of Climate Change AI, a global non-profit focused on the role machine learning can play in tackling climate change.
AI is not some kind of silver bullet, nor is it more valuable than other classical tools for climate action. It is a new and valuable tool, but I want to emphasize AI should not be distracting from other modes of climate action. This is something that is being used now, is oftentimes not especially fancy, even though it comes with the label AI. AI can refer to all kinds of things. And this is a very well-defined computer algorithm that is doing a task very well. It's not some scary, intelligent being. It's just a computer doing computer things.
So David says it's important not to see AI as a magic tech solution. He doesn't see it as a game changer. It's a powerful tool for sure, but as we've discovered researching for this miniseries, it also comes with some downsides and risks, and we'll have more on those in the next episodes. Today, we want to start by focusing on what AI might be able to help us with. We need to slash our carbon emissions dramatically if we're to meet the Paris climate targets and avoid runaway global warming. And it's very difficult to estimate with figures just how much AI can do here. A study by PricewaterhouseCoopers that was commissioned by Microsoft concluded that AI applications in the sectors of agriculture, water, energy and transport could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 4% by 2030. Equivalent to the annual emissions of Australia, Canada and Japan combined. But general stats like this should be treated with caution, so we'll try and get into some specifics. Artificial intelligence is being applied in many areas, and we knew it was going to be tricky to choose what to focus on, so we asked David to tell us some of the main ways AI is being used to help the environment.
The overall themes that we've identified for how AI and machine learning can be relevant in climate action include, first, distilling large, unstructured data into usable information. So that could be taking satellite imagery and picking out where deforestation is happening, where communities are at risk from coastal flooding, or predicting crop yield to avert food insecurity.
David also raised forecasting, that is, using AI to improve predictions of how much electricity we need, something that becomes more important with variable sources such as solar and wind. We need to know how much power is going to be consumed and produced at any given moment to balance our electricity grids, and more accurate minute-by-minute forecasts can save emissions.
The third theme I want to touch on is in optimizing complicated automated systems to use less energy. For example, in heating and cooling systems in buildings, HVAC systems, or in various industrial processes where there are many knobs that can be turned, and AI can learn how to control those knobs in a very efficient way to use less energy. And then the final theme I want to touch on is in speeding up the process of scientific discovery and experimentation, where there are many different, for example, materials that need to be improved upon as part of climate action in batteries, in electrocatalysts, in photovoltaic cells. And there are ways that AI can be used to help discover new materials by suggesting experiments to try, not replacing the process of experimentation, but providing insights into what might be good candidates.
Okay, so there are some interesting ways there that artificial intelligence is already being deployed to protect forests, for example. Satellite imagery plus algorithms for detecting the sound of chainsaws can alert authorities about deforestation, a problem that contributes to more than 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. It can help farmers manage a variety of crops on a large scale, make smarter decisions about what to plant when, and reduce the need for fertilizers, or even alert them to when a locust plague might be likely to strike. It can also clean up supply chains and help industries be more efficient. For instance, one startup in the US is using AI to cut CO2 emissions in the steel industry by 450,000 tons each year. Let's just zoom in on another example for now, and this one involves our electricity system. Keeping the power grid stable can be complicated when renewables like solar are part of the mix. What happens when clouds block out the sun? How do you ensure a constant power supply? To bridge the gap in those moments, operators need to have generators running in reserve, and these are often powered by fossil fuels, which in turn produce CO2 emissions. Now, a British non-profit called Open Climate Fix has been working with the UK National Grid to bring down these emissions. Here's Open Climate Fix's program manager, Kasia Krusacka.
So, with more and more renewables integrated into our grids, network operators have much harder work to do to balance the grid and avoid blackouts. What they do is they run so-called spinning reserve in the background, which in most countries would be gas-powered generators that run at around 50% of their capacity. And then if there's a risk of shortage of renewable energy in the system, then the generators can be ramped up relatively quickly to compensate for this shortage. So just to help you visualize it, you can compare it to cars waiting at the red lights. Most of the time their engines would be still on, and when the lights turn to green, they can quickly accelerate. But then, this is of course very carbon intensive, because gas generators are a lot less fuel efficient when ramped down. And the surplus emissions could be reduced with better forecasting. With the forecasts currently used, it is very difficult to predict when a cloud comes in and can cause a sudden drop in the amount of energy generated from solar.
Open Climate Fix is using machine learning to improve solar forecasts, to create a more accurate picture of what the weather is doing and how clouds are developing. The non-profit says their machine learning model is being trained on over a decade of satellite imagery over Europe, mainly clouds moving. They also use current weather predictions as well as solar power readings from more than 25,000 solar power systems across the UK to see how many gigawatts will be produced. And with that data, they can get very accurate short-term solar forecasts. Forecasts that they say are 3 times more accurate than the previous national grid system. So once you have this data, how does it help? And how big really are the CO2 savings?
To be fair, it is rather difficult to predict exactly how much carbon would be saved from better PV forecasts. Our conservative calculation based on our work in the UK suggests that better solar forecasts can reduce CO2 emissions generated by spinning reserve alone by around 100,000 tons of CO2 per year. If we take calculations and try to estimate potential global impact, We are estimating around 50 million tons of CO2 per year.
One criticism of some AI systems is that just training and running them can use a lot of energy, and that can also lead to more emissions. Kasia says Open Climate Fix has an estimated carbon footprint of around 1 ton of CO2 equivalent per year, much less than the CO2 it ultimately saves. And the hope is it will give renewables more momentum.
Using satellite imagery and advanced AI to predict cloud movement can help make grid management significantly easier, cheaper, and greener. This in turn will also make integration of renewable energy sources into the grid much easier. These huge numbers can be achieved via software alone, with no expensive capital costs, and can be easily scaled up in any country. So, for example, all our code is open source, and we release almost all of the data we use openly in easy-to-access formats to make it easier for anyone to adopt our models.
Beyond the UK, Open Climate Fix is now also piloting their forecasting models in 2 countries in southern Europe, and they're also in talks to run a pilot in Asia. So, we've heard how artificial intelligence is being used to help reduce CO2 emissions, something we have to do urgently to tackle the climate crisis. Another environmental crisis we're facing is biodiversity loss. Poaching, deforestation, the expansion of agriculture and the illegal wildlife trade have led to a rapid decline in animal populations. And this is another area where artificial intelligence is being deployed to protect species that are at risk.
Rhino conservation is a very touchy subject at the moment, and as we probably all aware, rhino horn is in high demand in a number of different markets, which makes them a targeted species, and we are trying to assist all of the protected areas and conservation organizations to protect them.
Bruce Jones is the Partnership Director with EarthRanger, a software tool that is part of the US-based Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence, which was founded in 2014 by philanthropist and Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen.
Tracking rhinos has historically been quite difficult. The trouble with rhinos is that their necks are very different from any other animals, and you can't put a collar around a rhino's neck. Just physically, they don't fit.
So EarthRanger teamed up with a South African engineer, Pierre Leroux, and his company Roussel. They developed AI-enabled bracelets that fit around rhinos' ankles, so conservation teams can see where rhinos are located and monitor their behavior in real time.
He's written some really interesting algorithms and used machine learning to try and determine when the animals are under duress or distressed. And they would then exhibit abnormal movement patterns. So it might be that they are in a flight mode, running away from somebody, or they have been shot and they are moving in a way that is erratic, or a number of other different types of movements. And what's made this exercise particularly tricky is that rhinos like to wallow in mud. So trying to distinguish between a rhino wallowing in mud and having a lot of fun versus being in distress has been quite tricky.
The devices have been rolled out at different sites from Kenya down to South Africa, and the idea is that authorities managing those areas can respond quickly if a rhino is in danger.
Managers are responding to these events and causing a lot of disturbance amongst the poaching community, because the poaching community is now aware that something is going on, and they can't go in at will to poach these animals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So have there been a lot of cases where you've been able to get a team there, ahead of the poachers before they were able to kill a rhino?
Neil, there have been a number of cases where there have been some false positives, or there has been something going on. The number of actual poaching events that have been thwarted is pretty confidential. But the standard operating procedures that the different protected areas have got in place are quite strong, very strong. And so the chances of something happening are very slim. There was one case where a rhino was actually poached, and they had one of the Roussel ankle bracelets on them so that they could see the sorts of behavior that this poor rhino exhibited once it had been shot, which helped a lot with the machine learning, unfortunately at the expense of the animal's life. But it's all added to the success of this machine learning and hopefully for the future animals that are out there.
So what can you tell us then about the rhino population? I mean, what impact is this having? Is the population growing again?
It's difficult to say. It's very regional. Even within one country, there might be different regions where there's more or less success. And we can't attribute all successes or failures to any one factor, including EarthRanger or any tracking devices. So in some cases, numbers are growing due to efforts by the protected area managers using technology like EarthRanger and Roussel's collars. And in other areas, they can have all of the technology and everything in place, but there might be external circumstances that are leading to more poaching. And that's normally inside information and corrupt individuals that are within the system.
Bruce, can you perhaps give us an idea what kind of price tag this has? Is this something that, anybody can invest in easily enough who has endangered species to protect, or is the bar quite high implementing this kind of technology?
Neil, luckily, there are a lot of philanthropists in this industry. So EarthRanger itself is backed by the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation. So the software is not charged for, and neither is our support or the hosting of the software. So there's zero cost as far as that is concerned. The collars, the Roussel does have a bit of backing, but they do need to cover some of their costs, but it is quite cost effective. But these are parts of a larger system. So you need anti-poaching units, you need equipment for all of the anti-poaching units and the drones, and those are real costs. Operating rooms, radios, two-way communications. So there's some real costs in this whole system. Okay.
But I mean, at the end of the day then, Bruce, if you were to give a verdict on AI or the use of AI in conservation, it sounds to me like it's quite key to what you are doing. It is helping you a lot, or would I be going too far in saying that?
No, I think that's a fair reflection. The AI is improving and we're finding new uses for it all the time. And so with the growth of AI and different use cases being added to it, there's a bigger and bigger impact on conservation that's coming out here. Other examples that we are involved with would be the identification of certain subjects of interest, could I put it that way, from camera trap images. So there are some organizations like Wildlife Protection Solutions that have AI attached to camera traps. So the cameras get triggered for any sort of movement, but then you would have edge AI on the devices that would do a rough cut identification of certain species with say a 60% level of confidence. And then those images would then be sent through to a cloud-based AI system, which is a lot more powerful, so that they can get to a 98% level of confidence as to what the species might be and identify things like different animal species, whether it's a human with a weapon, if they have dogs. And then those images would then be sent through to a system like EarthRanger. And again, the same sorts of processes would be triggered through to anti-poaching units and others, so that only those images of interest come through to the system. So that's another example of what goes on there. And then the same principle can be applied to acoustic sounds. There are organizations that also pick up acoustic sounds like Rainforest Connection, that again, the same way that camera traps pick up different images and identify them, so does Rainforest Connection's acoustic sensors pick up different sounds, and they can distinguish between sounds like chainsaws, gunshots, car engines, human voices, so that only those sounds of interest can be sent through. So, for instance, if you hear a chainsaw in a certain area, you know that there is a deforestation event going on. Or if there's a gunshot, then it might be some sort of poaching event happening, and then the same sorts of processes can be triggered.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also get systems like Skylight, which is one of our sister products, which using AI can identify illegal fishing types of activities in the high seas. So it can identify dark vessels where there might be rendezvous on the high seas and transshipments. And that's all using AI of different images from satellite imagery to try and identify vessel sizes, their movement patterns to determine whether they are in some sort of trawling pattern. So all of that sort of AI is being added to this portfolio of conservation AI. And I can only see that getting bigger and bigger and the uses getting broader and broader.
Thanks to Bruce Jones from EarthRanger there. So, in this episode, we've tried to give you a taste of AI's potential to help us tackle the massive environmental challenges before us, climate change and biodiversity loss. Much of the reporting around AI has been hopeful, and tech companies are sharing in this optimism. A Microsoft spokesperson told us that AI can play a pivotal role in addressing the climate crisis. The tech giant has a number of initiatives geared towards this goal, such as its AI for Good lab or its AI for Science organization. Google, too, has its AI for Social Good program, which focuses on solving humanitarian and environmental challenges. But with this powerful technology comes responsibility. And there are some risks and pitfalls that are in danger of being eclipsed by the current AI hype.
There is this idea of AI being this clean technology just being produced by a handful of companies, but it actually relies on the exploitation of people and the environment.
We're not going to end up in a Terminator scenario anytime soon. But what we will end up with is technology being used to do the wrong things and to accelerate the wrong activities.
If we don't place the climate crisis at the center of this development of this most recent technology, which is AI, then we're going to absolutely miss the chance to sort out the biggest crisis that we're facing.
That's what we'll be looking at next week with On the Green Fence. That's it from me for now. Many thanks to my colleague and producer Natalie Muller. And a big thank you to all our listeners for sharing, reviewing and subscribing to On the Green Fence. My name is Neil King. Take it easy and take care.
On the green fence.